KD is staying in Brooklyn. Nets GM Sean Marks saying the decision was made after he, Durant, Steve Nash, and team ownership met in Los Angeles just yesterday. The Nets releasing a statement that reads in part, "We have agreed to move forward with our partnership. We are focusing on basketball with one collective goal in mind, build a lasting franchise to bring a championship to Brooklyn." That leads us right into the Daily Thread. We've got NBA champion and radio voice of the Celtics, Cedric Maxwell, joining me right now. And Cedric, before we went live, I told you, hey, I'm happy that all this is over. All the rumors, the trade rumors surrounding Kevin Durant, Jalen Brown being in the mix as well. But you told me that you're not happy about how this went down.
I got tears in my eyes right now. You're thinking about, this is one of the best players right now in the game that you have the possibility of getting. And I think that if you look at it that way and take the personalities out, Red Auerbach said it best. Don't fall in love with the product. You're always trying to improve. No doubt this Celtic team is a great team right now, but I think you add on to that. And you may mention, you said, well, wait, what happens if KD is only there for 2 years? Well, what happens if Brown is only there for 2 years? What you want to do is you really want to maximize the years that you have with these guys out on the floor and what they can do.
I could imagine the situation between KD and Sean Marks and Steve Nash, that it has to be awkward, especially after that ultimatum that Kevin Durant put out there publicly that it's either them or him on this roster. How do you expect that to play out this season, that relationship between Kevin Durant and the front office, and more importantly, his head coach, Steve Nash?
I always like to do this like women and wives and husbands. If your husband came in and said he wanted a divorce and next week he said, hey, we're all good, that ain't no good no more. You're done right now. So I think that if you look at the way KD, I think there's going to be some problems. There's going to be some difficulty there because there's a trust factor which comes into play. And if all of a sudden you have the general manager, you have the head coach, and you say, I want them both to be fired, do you think they don't remember that? So I think it's going to be difficult in Brooklyn, to go forward.
I just think about the chemistry, the issues that the Nets had with chemistry last season, and I feel like this doesn't add anything good to it at all. But what does this all mean for the Celtics moving forward? Now that they're out of the equation, KD is staying in Brooklyn, how does this affect the Celtics this upcoming season?
Do we really know if he's not leaving Brooklyn? Do we really know that? At the end of the day, people have said a bunch of different things. Until the season ends, I don't know what's going to happen. But I tell you what, the Celtics have a great basketball club. The thing that they're going to have to worry about this year is they're not going to be able to sneak up on anybody. They won't be able to sneak up on them cheating Lakers out there, out in Los Angeles. They won't be able to do that. They won't be able to all these teams that you have to play against, you're not going to sneak up on them. So the Celtics this year are going to be the hunted. And when you're the hunted, I think it really takes it to another level.
With KD being back, you got Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, which we still don't know what he's going to look like on that Nets roster. But how does this Nets team now with KD coming back affect the rest of the Eastern Conference?
Well, I think it depends on how they play. I mean, you're looking at, are you going to be able to bring in all the players you talk about? Are they going to be Ben Simmons? Here's a guy who hasn't played in about a year and a half. Trust factor again with him, wanting to leave out. Kyrie not getting vaccinated, trust factor with him. Now you look at Durant saying, I want this guy fired. I want this. Where is the trust factor? What's a Trill one-time trooper there, whatever that is? Well, you need to put all those guys up there because this is going to be a difficult thing, really trying to make amends and bring these guys back together to play as a team. Fortunately for the Celtics, they don't have that problem. Because what they have is they have Ime Udoka. They have great young talent that play together. The only problem people keep talking about now is Jalen Brown's name was in the mix, talking about a trade. Will he be hurt? I hope that and I know he's more professional than that. To think that all of a sudden his name can't be mentioned, what you have to do is take this as a business. If he takes this as a business and he shows what he's going to do on the court, I think the Celtics will be fine.
I think the Celtics will be fine as well, and I think that Jalen Brown definitely understands that that's just a part of the game and that's a part of the business, his name being thrown into the mix. All right, Kevin Durant isn't the only player who tried to force his way out of Brooklyn this offseason. Kyrie Irving gave the Nets a list of teams he would have liked them to consider working on a sign-and-trade deal. No viable trade materialized, but it still raises the question of player empowerment in the NBA. Forsberg and D.J. Bean joining me right now alongside Cedric Maxwell.
No one wanted to trade for Kyrie.
I heard you snickering as I read that VO. He's like, oh, no one wanted to trade for Kyrie.
I think the Lakers wanted to trade for Kyrie. I think the Nets said, Russell, who? Absolutely no. That's what I think happened.
A lot of different things happening with Kyrie Irving, but let's focus on player empowerment. And guys, honestly, from my perspective, I don't mind players having control over their career or their contracts or where they go and where they stay. However, Forsberg, how does KD staying in Brooklyn kind of move that line a little bit? How does that affect player empowerment throughout the NBA, and what messages it send?
It just shows that there is a line that, like, you can't just force your way in every situation. Now, look, we can go back to Anthony Davis and sort of power playing his way to the Lakers, but this was a situation where the Nets looked at him like, man, you're under contract for 4 years. Like, we don't have to do this if we don't love the deal. And it's all part of the reason that I just never thought a deal would materialize, because the Nets could hold out for a ransom. And when Rudy Gobert gets dealt for what essentially is 5 first-round picks, and the best you can do is, like, the Celtics kind of floating an offer with Jalen Brown out there, it feels like the Nets were going to dig in. They were never going to get to a point where they were willing to make that deal. And so I'm thrilled that a team was willing to be like, you know what? This is going to be a little bit unseemly coming back. It's going to be some pain points, but we'd much rather just try to ride this out, and it's okay to keep a player who is under contract for that duration.
I love Kevin Durant as a player, but I think this says more about Kevin Durant than it says about player empowerment and players choosing where they go. I think that if Kevin Durant were a free agent, and if he were even at his age, but if he were 3 years younger, everybody would be tripping over themselves to sign him right now because he's Kevin freaking Durant. I think that teams look at this and they say, Kevin Durant, you are 33 years old, and when you pick where you go, you want to leave after 2 years. What are you going to do at age 34 or age 35 with us, a team you didn't pick, after we just gave up a boatload of assets to get you, something that your previous 2 employers didn't really have to do with the Golden State Warriors and the Brooklyn Nets? I think that, Amina, this is mainly teams saying, we just can't take the risk on this guy with these circumstances right now.
And Cedric, do you think it has more to do with the circumstances or maybe a message to player empowerment around the league?
I think it has a little bit to do with both. I think one of the things you look at is Kevin Durant, you know, he was in Golden State. I mean, this is a place where if you're going to be happy, you're going to be happy there playing with Steph and that group winning championships. All of a sudden, you don't win a champ, you decide to leave and go elsewhere. So I think that people looked at it in a very confused way, because if you think about Kevin Durant, essentially, he was printing money out there in Golden State. All of a sudden, now he wants to come to someplace else. People started to question his decision making, and I think that really would affect him not being traded. And you know, player empowerment is something, but at the end of the day, I'm a little happy right now that he is staying put, and just in my own selfish way of him being under contract. Although I would have loved to see him play with the Celtics.
KD signed that max contract extension last summer, right? And so it's 4 years, $194 million, and that would have taken place or started. It's going to start this upcoming season, Forsberg. But he asked for a trade before that contract even started. Should players be, not forced, but should they be kind of, required to at least go throughout their contract?
And players are always going to have the power because they're the focal points, and you're always going to try to put yourself in the best possible situation that you feel like you should be in. But I just keep going back to it. I mean, he's been in some really good situations. As DJ eloquently said, all of a sudden to get disgruntled in those situations when this is what he wanted, and already he wants out of it. That's concerning to me. And so I just don't. You got to. Sometimes you make your bed and you got to sleep in it. And for right now, at least, Kevin Durant has no other option.
You know what, guys? I want to step in, because this is what I hate when we don't talk about the other side. When players get traded, do we say something about they had 3 years on their contract and they got traded? I got traded. I had 3 years left on my contract when I got traded to LA. but nobody cried any tears for me. And at the end of the day, I didn't even hear from my teammates once I got traded. So I just want to say that when you think about players and what they do, you have to look at it from both sides.
No, and not only that, I mean, there are horror stories, behind the scenes stuff of guys had things going on in their lives. This is not the time they needed to be traded, but the trade made sense for the team, so they had to do it. And we don't even hear about that sort of stuff. As far as can he just request a trade when he's got 4 years on a deal that hasn't begun yet, I think that he should. It's a free country. He should be allowed to ask, and they should be allowed to say no.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Again, like I said, I feel like players should just have full control of their careers and their contracts. If you want to stay, you want to stay. Yeah, you don't want to go, you don't want to go. All right, today's KD News officially puts Jalen Brown trade rumors to rest, at least for now. Here's what Celtics President of Basketball Operations Brad Stevens said earlier today on WEEI about all the rumors and Brown.
Jalen's been through this from the standpoint of listening, and the noise has been around him for a long time, and big names, right, over the years. And, I think one of the things that you got to be able to do, and better than anybody in this world of professional athletics, you got to be able to ignore the noise and know what's important, but also be able to reach out and have candid and transparent communications with the people that are involved. And so, we've had those. Made ourselves very open from the get-go as all of this has been going on for any of our guys.
Cedric, you brought this up earlier. Jalen Brown with just 2 more years left on his contract. Then he becomes an unrestricted free agent. And we all don't know whether or not he's going to stay here in Boston. But how will the Celtics feel if they didn't go all in on Kevin Durant and then Jalen Brown walks when he's a free agent?
I think a lot of us should look back and say, how that happened. And I want to go even further when thinking about it. What players lose sometimes. I lost $150,000 a year when I got traded to the Clippers. Essentially, I had to buy my own tennis shoes once I got out there. So I don't feel sad for, all this talk we're talking about Jalen and what he's doing. He's making $25 million a year. He has to understand this is about business. And your name is going to be sometimes tossed in the hat, and understand that he's talking about a great player. And if that great player happens to be in your name or in your branch, hey, man, just relax and take it easy and go from there.
Yeah, I go back to the idea of Jalen Brown for Kevin Durant and some other pieces. I mean, you can't be mad at that if you're Jalen Brown and your name is being thrown in a deal for Kevin Durant.